time that you have a day. Peak time, 10 trucks an hour.
6 to 6, you have 12 hours divided by 200.
You could do that.
Well, you're not going to roll a truck out of there at 6 o'clock in the morning. They got to.
Well, when you say stacked up, we're not stacked up anywhere. They're in sight. I mean, they're not stacked up on 17 waiting.
Well, I mean, I'm in the plan. I'm stacked up. They're in line waiting to be.
I just wanted to make sure the difference between being out on the road
Right.
and being stacked up on site. And the reason the question was asked is because we were perceived as a Maryland company. I think the perception was that all the material was going to be taken right over to 301 north into Maryland. And that was, so we used a market study to determine where our sales would be.
And I guess that brings into the other mines that are there. Hayfield is currently already opened up. They're closed down. They've been closed for some time. So demand-wise, you know, you've got a lot of work to do to even begin to catch up to where they are. And I'm just looking at the market. Same thing you just said. What's the market going to bear?
I don't know how Mr. Childs would answer this, but all due respect, we're the leaders in the market in sand and gravel in our market. We believe we're going to outperform them. We wouldn't be investing or going through this process if we don't believe we're going to be open and running a business and a successful business. So I don't know how to answer that question from our competitors' perspective. But we have concrete operations in this state that need to be supplied with sand and gravel. We're beating them in Maryland. We're the best in class in that state, and we believe we'll do the same here. So we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't think we were going to run a business.
Yeah.
What was your last name again, Paul?
Cheney.
Thank you.
One thing that I wanted to say to you, to the Board of Supervisors, as I sit here tonight, I'm concerned about the petition. We don't think that petition is, we don't need it, and if you would disregard it, the one with 11.
Well, wait a minute, Mr. Cheney. That petition was submitted as evidence, or Mr. Charles, I'm sorry. That petition was submitted as evidence to this special exception. It's a matter of public record, and it's been submitted with your application. You all submitted that petition with your application. Nobody else but you could do that. So I'm going to take exception since you said the petition, because I've got 50 people on here that didn't sign it and 6 people that are deceased.
Mr. Seeley, we didn't submit that. A person that testified here did.
But why is it? It's in with your application.
Sir, I can't answer it. We didn't do it.
Mr. Fincham, how did this application then get in here if they didn't submit it?
I think Reverend Cunningham.
Wait. I want to hear.
The petition was submitted to the Planning Commission as part of their process. It becomes part of the public record, as you stated, like any other document or letter that is submitted to the Planning Commission or the board becomes part of the public record.
I have had numerous constituents ask for an investigation by the Sheriff's Office, the Commonwealth's Attorney, or the Attorney General to find out why we have a petition that is public record that is in a special exception permit. They were here. There were a lot of folks. A few spoke. I've got numerous phone calls. They're going to go back through the petition that was given tonight. But I think the due diligence for those folks that came needs to be done so that we can get to the bottom of, as I have letters up here, Class 4 felonies, Class 5 felonies. Those letters were submitted, but they are in accordance with your submission. So at the end of the process, they came up. I didn't hear you say don't turn in the petition when they did it. They stood here. Everybody was fine with it. I didn't hear anybody say don't turn it in.
For the record, my name is Clay Haynes. I'm an attorney in Northern Virginia, Falls Church, Virginia. I represent Cheney. I've had the good fortune to have represented them for about 2 decades. I compliment you on the public hearing. In my 52 years of practice, I've also had the opportunity to represent towns, cities, and counties in the Commonwealth. I also represent applicants in zoning cases.
Mr. Haynes,
I would like to answer the question.
commercial, but if you could answer the question, that would be really good.
Thank you. The question is whether or not we submitted, Cheney, this petition. We did not. It was not submitted as part of our application. It may have been submitted by others that were interested in the application. It was not submitted by the Cheney organization. I do believe that you should investigate it, and I think that it's a very serious thing. It's a misrepresentation of a fact, and whoever was involved with making those false representations should be punished according to the law. It's not our petition. It's in the record. I agree with that. Thank you.
Sir. Anything else?
Yeah, I've got two other.
While you look for those, I just had an idea to save Mrs. Hall and Mr. Cully a lot of time. Can you scan those in the morning and put them on the website? We will run all of those pages through the scanner and post those on our website sometime tomorrow. And anyone who finds their name on there that they didn't sign, I'd like them to send an email or some notification to the county. And trust me, we will follow up with those. We'll pass those to the sheriff's office.
Mr. Thomas, that's going to be a criminal investigation, and it should come to us if you can put that on the website. We'll need the original document.
It shouldn't come to you? I mean, we'll give you the original.
It is a forgery not in President's rights, but another, so it will be a felony investigation.
You don't want us to put it on the website?
You can put it on there, and we can gather the victims of the petition, but we'll need the original for evidence.
We will give you the original as soon as she finishes scanning it. And we'll actually, Major Mosier, that's even better, we'll direct people to contact the sheriff's office as part of that investigation.
That'll be great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Fincham, I have a question for you. And it comes to the change of the character of the area
Yes, sir.
in actually, in the comprehensive plan and what a special exception is supposed to go towards. And one of the key factors in a special exception is it's not supposed to have an inherent change of character of the area or of the activity that takes place in this.
Yes, sir.
I believe that this mine will take us to that actual change of character that we are supposed to be mindful of when we're actually looking at a special exception.
Okay.
Is that true?
Well, I think that's ultimately the decision of the board. But if you read on page 10, under the zoning analysis, section 1, retaining the character of the area was cited as a concern.
The very first bullet.
Yes, sir.
And then number 6 comes into question where it says, however, the comprehensive plan designates this area as an agricultural preservation, which does not allow sand and gravel operations.
Yes, sir. That's one of the issues that require some explanation. The property is currently zoned rural preservation. Sand and gravel operations are allowed by special exception in the RP district. However, in looking at one of the standards that we have to look at in evaluating the in evaluating the application is the consistency with the comprehensive plan, which calls for this area to be agricultural preservation. And I think at the end of the day, the board needs to be satisfied that this use will not adversely affect the agricultural preservation designation of the comprehensive plan. The applicant has proposed, as part of the sand and gravel extraction, to reclaim the property, and for that reclaimed property, in part, to be continued to be used for agricultural purposes. And I think the issue for the board is you have to be comfortable that at the end of the day, after this sand and gravel operation is done, that the purpose and intent of the agricultural preservation designation of the comprehensive plan will be met and not degraded by the operation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fincham. I don't have any questions at this time.
Mr. Black?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Childs, I actually have some questions for Mr. Childs, please.
Mr. Childs, if you would come forward, please.
First of all, I want to thank you for meeting with me. I do appreciate that, and I did learn a lot from you, so I do thank you, and I do think that your company is obviously does a lot for the community. I guess when I met with you, I thought we talked about there was going to be, I remember correctly, 400 full truckloads of sand and gravel per day. Is it 200 full truckloads or 400? Because that would make it
200.
It's just 200.
Yes, sir.
200 full truckloads.
Full truckloads.
200 full up, and they don't all go out fully loaded either, but it's 200 loads, 200 out.
And then, so that's capped?
That's part of the permit. That's exactly
Right.
what we've asked for.
Yeah, okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure. I guess the next question I have for you is, there are places on Route 17, we got the Haymount and we got the Sneed mine. Just out of curiosity, those are already pre-approved mines. What was the reason that your company didn't look on that part of 17, because they're already pre-approved, to say, hey, well, this is where we're going?
The Haymarket, I think, is that one you referenced?
Haymount, yeah.
Haymarket is our direct competitor. So I don't think there would be any opportunity to make any kind of deal with them. The Sneed farm, I think Mr. Sneed wants to do run his business, run his operation, and he's a fine gentleman, but I don't think he had any interest in dealing with us. And we found a great site, and we think we've got a great proposal put together.
Well, we do have a letter from him today saying that he wished he could have partnered with you guys, so, I mean, we just got that in tonight. So, just want to point that out. I guess I have some questions for your engineers regarding the traffic lanes coming in and out. Is there someone from that could do that, the turn lanes?
Yes.
Okay, so you were saying most of your sand and gravel operation trucks are going to be going 17 north towards Spotsylvania, correct? That is correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And now you're saying, like, on 17 south, if I'm coming from Spotsylvania towards, say, Port Royal area, towards the mine, you have what you call it basically an acceleration-deceleration lane. Is it just semantics that you're calling the left turn lane? Is that just semantics you're saying basically like a bypass lane? Why don't you call that lane, that extra lane, an acceleration lane going north?
The idea for that lane is it's a two-lane facility today, and so when the truck would pull out to go north on 17, if a car was coming northbound, they would have the ability to bypass the truck.
And what is the length of that lane turning left to go? If I'm a loaded truck leaving your mine, I'm going.
Well, I believe it's about 700 feet. Does
that give a sand and gravel trim enough time to get up to 55 miles an hour? 45, the speed limit, 45, Major Bossier, 45, 55 in there?
Well, that all depends on the driver and the load, but no, the truck would probably not be at 50 miles an hour and 700 feet.
The next question I had in your engineering study, in which was, I'm a school teacher, so I'm not an engineer, but I had a couple questions in regards to the level of service on that road that was submitted by you guys. Level of service on that road says you want a minimum requires, Mr. Fincham had said, a minimum requirement of C. In your own engineering, there was a couple times when it dropped down to D. Can you explain that to me? There was a couple times on different segments of the road where you in your own study actually dropped the level of service from a C to a D.
That we dropped it. The intersection, one of the intersections that we studied and was Route 2 and Route 17 in Spotsylvania County. And that intersection overall operates at an acceptable level of service C during both the peak hours, with and without the proposal. There are certain turning movements that operate at a D level of service, and it's
So, excuse, let me just stop there. So when I'm saying turning movements, I'm on the one-lane road, I'm on 17 going north towards Spotsylvania, and I want to turn, I'm turning left into a personal, personal property or whatever. Is that what you're talking about?
well, this is at the intersection of Route 2.
It's just at the intersection of 2, okay.
And there's some separate turn lanes there. I believe there's separate right turn lanes.
Okay.
And I think on Route 17 are separate left turn lanes. And some of those lanes, for instance, the left turn lane from 17 operates at a D today and would continue to operate at a D. We don't degrade the level of service.
I guess the next question, and I appreciate it, I thank you. I guess the next question is, this is I guess for me, one of the issues is Port Royal southward, this road is a 4-lane road. And Spotsylvania is a 4-lane road. I guess my concern is we're talking about a 2-lane road here. What is the procedure if one of your trucks, because I got a picture right here of, this is 17. It looks like the shoulder's about 2 feet wide. What is the procedure if one of your trucks breaks down in this area? I'm just curious because it could happen. I'm just wondering what happens if one of the trucks breaks down in this area on a 2-lane road. A 4-lane road, usually I've got more shoulder. So I'm just kind of curious on a 2-lane road what we're doing here.
Well,
On a 2-lane road, just like you would do with your automobile, if you had a car there, you would be faced with the same situation. What you may have to do, you may have to drive on the rim. You do move to the closest safe spot, get out of the way of traffic, put your flares out, put your V-boards, traffic safety boards out, and you do it just like you would do your own car.
My concern is that this isn't a car. This is a dump truck full of sand and gravel. I guess my concern is it's a little bit bigger and a little bit larger. I guess that's my only concern. If you can't move somewhere, you're going to be impacting traffic. That's all I'm saying.
Well, if you can't move, you're right, but it wouldn't be pretty unusual if you couldn't move and get in a safe position.
Okay, thank you. Was there, just out of curiosity, was there any talk about a traffic light at your mine with VDOT? Was there any discussion with that at all about putting a traffic light?
no.
There was no discussion. Okay. The next question I have for you is,
Mr. Black?
what's that?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Would you be willing to put a traffic light there?
I'm going to address that. Was there any conversation publicly? No. In-house, yes. The traffic light, believe it or not, is going to cause a problem. The traffic light is going to leave the vehicle stopped, and that's when the truck gets rear-ended. We've got everything pulled off the road. We've hired these folks. Wells is a traffic expert. They can address it, but we thought about it just like you were thinking about it.
I'm a real binary kind of guy, so it's either yes or no. What was that answer?
Go ahead, you want to answer?
We never discussed the traffic signal with VDOT.
Would you be willing to put one there, yes or no?
If you get into it, you're going to find it's a mistake. We would consider it, but it is not the appropriate. We've spent a lot of time and money designing the best traffic system.
Would you be willing to put a traffic light there, yes or no?
If it made sense, and you say that I think you're quite, anyhow. Yeah, we would do it if you want us to put it there, but you're going to find it's not the right way to go.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Black?
Major Moser, can you comment on that? Because I know you're not VDOT, but at the same time, as far as the traffic light is concerned at intersections, is it make an intersection more dangerous or an area more dangerous or less dangerous?
With the signage that comes with traffic lights, traffic light ahead and stuff of that nature, I think a traffic light would benefit this intersection.
Okay, thank you. Hang on.
He can't make that determination.
All right, now the
I-
next question I have for Mr.
Can I address that? May I address it?
My question or his question?
About the warrant studies for the light. I'm also a land use attorney.
Okay.
I do this for a living.
Let
Mike
Mr.
Granzo.
Black ask his questions,
Sure.
and then we'll come back to you if we need to.
All right.
If you don't mind. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cheney, can I? Yes, sir. Or Mr. Childs, I'm sorry. One of the things I asked the Commissioner of Revenue, I asked her in regards to the mines that we have in Caroline County. By the count of the tax records of Caroline County, we have nine sand and gravel mines. And then so I went through, she gave me a list of the revenue that we've gotten from them. And the revenue last year in 2014, for the fiscal year 2014, was $31,269.03 out of 9 mines. So if you do the math on that, that is about $4,000, $3,000, I guess, dollars per mine. Now we do have one mine in the area that houses its equipment in the area, and so we get a personal property tax out of them that is quite significant. Are you guys going to be housing your equipment? Is it going to be registered here in Caroline County? Because outside of that one particular mine, that one mine gives us, by housing that particular sand and gravel mine, gives us $50,000 in personal property, which is more than the other mines combined. So I guess my question to you is, if you add their personal property, then the total jumps to $81,000 out of 9 divided by 9 mines. Only 4, by the way, are active right now. Are you guys going to be housing your equipment in Caroline County?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, I've done a calculation. If you excuse me, I have a number here that I've calculated that I believe the tax revenue is. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, we would, of course, we'd like to hear it. That was a good tease.
I have a list put together that I asked our chief financial officer to put together to be able to answer this question if it came up. I can give you the total, I can break it down. There's 17 taxes that you'll receive from us. Corporate income tax, payroll tax, sales tax, unemployment taxes, real estate taxes, the planned construction taxes, litter tax, sales customers, personal property tax, merchants, permitting, fuel tax, excise tax, new mobile capital expenditure tax, that's the equipment you're talking about, utility tax. Again, this is approximate. This is from me. It comes up to $315,000 when we get started on the federal level, $149,000 on the state, and $42,270 to Caroline County.
May I ask a question to follow up to that, Mr. Childs?
Certainly.
Some of those taxes, I don't believe we would receive in Caroline unless you've reduced the number there. We don't have an income tax that we're going to get money from you. The state will probably, but we don't do that. So your $42,000 for the county may sound realistic, only based on personal property tax.
If I may, could I ask our chief financial officer who put this together for me to explain to you the answer to that question?
Only if that's him standing behind.
That's him.
Hello, I'm Tom Flynn. I'm the
Hello,
Chief
Mr.
Financial
Flynn.
Officer of Cheney. The first year, the difference is that $42,000, there's about $29,000 in permitting fees that go to you guys. As we ramp the business up, that initial fee does go away. It comes back to about $26,000. But when you add it up, we're not actually adding the multiplier effect. We're only adding what we give you. When the multiplier effect is applied, it's probably greater than that. And more than likely, your tax lady's not looking at that because it's secondary. I'll be glad to share this with you.
Yeah, and although we won't consider this an economics class, I'm going to allow you a brief bit to explain the multiplier effect.
Well, at the end of the day, for example, we employ an employee at $61,000 a year. They're going to, in turn, spend their money locally. Hopefully, those employees live in Caroline County. What we figured was the sales tax alone, an employee would probably spend $10,000 annually on consumables in the county. The county will get $2,600 on sales tax. I mean, that's what happens. They spend their money, we spend our money, and the trickle-down's pretty exciting here.
Okay.
Real estate, the Silver Company pays $2,300 a year for that property. Planned construction, we're going to spend $2 million putting the plan up. Approximately 5% of that is not going to be exempt. You're going to realize about $1,000 out of that. The sales tax, where you accrue about 1%. On the do-it-yourself guy that shows up on a Saturday, we estimate about $2,400 there. When you add it up, it's expensive.
Can you share that with us?
I'd be glad to.
Okay.
You're welcome to have this.
If you could give it to Mrs. Parton, and maybe Mr. Parton will get a copy over to Mrs. Carter so she could see something. Okay. Mr. Black, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that, of course, piqued everybody's interest.
I think I'm done for right now.
You done?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Mr. Fincham, I have a couple of questions, or really, I just have one question. Now, it's in the Port Royal District.
Oh, you want to do that?
He's last.
Okay.
I haven't met beforehand. I haven't met Mr. Cheney or you know, Mr. Childs or any of the folks from Cheney. I read their thesis, which was fairly good, and I think we all have a copy. But I did have a meeting with Mr. Silver, and I didn't know him before. I met him really through Jervis. Hairston, that's the reason I met with him. And at that original time, Mr. Silver was talking about a project that he wanted to do that involved 2 lakes on his property. So I'm going to turn down this application for mining. The board decides to vote against it. Mr. Silver is then going to say, I still want my 2 lakes. He's going to go and hire somebody, probably like Cheney, to basically dig holes in the ground for him to create lakes. Now, as long as he drives those trucks away, that's a by right application, isn't it?
I'm not sure I would agree with that, Mr. Thomas. I think we would need to look at that a little bit further.
So I can't dig a hole on my property and carry the dirt away.
You're now getting into the realm of a zoning determination that I'm not ready to render tonight.
Okay. But hypothetically, and of course several dollars in court later, somebody would decide that I, as a property owner, could dig a hole in my yard and carry the dirt away somewhere else.
You could dig a hole in your yard and spread the dirt elsewhere on your property, and we don't have the issue of off-site transport.
And you'd never care?
It would still require the appropriate permits to do that.
Yeah, erosion and sedimentation, those kind of things.
Correct.
But I as a property owner, I would have the right to dig a hole on my own property and basically create a lake. And the difference is, or where the interpretation comes in, is whether I could dig a hole on my own property again and have that dirt carried away. Because you're going to have an opinion at some point in the future and say, I've researched it, I think this is good. I'm sure the county attorney would do the same thing. Theoretically, a lot of people would say, gee whiz, I ought to be able to dig a hole on my own property and have the dirt carried away. There's a lot of property rights folks that would say yes. If that were the case, and I turn this, and the board turned this application down, Mr. Silver would still be able to do that same thing. And basically, we would have nothing to do with it, gain no financial benefit at all.
Again, I think we're talking about a potential zoning determination, additional facts that need to be discussed.
I'm sure there are other micro details that would alter a decision either way, but it's a 30,000-foot level of, I ought to be able to dig a hole in my own property, and what I do with the dirt is another story, but I ought to be able to do that. It's probably going to be a pretty expensive decision for you to think about, and to have somebody in the black robe say, I think this is the right answer. But that's part of what's behind this whole thing. So that was my one general question, and I think we've asked enough, and I cut in to ask enough for me. So, Mr. Taylor, if you would like to ask questions, this is in the Port Royal District, which is why I held you for last.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of the questions I had have been asked, so I won't belabor those. I think we've answered them, but there are several. We've talked a lot about wetlands and resource-sensitive areas and so forth. Can you tell me, Mr. Fincham, what have we done to safeguard, if you will, the wetlands and the resource-sensitive area, if this should be approved?
The delineation of the wetlands would have to be completed. Some of that has already been done, verified by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Along with that, then comes the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Overlay designations, which would also be determined at the time of site plan approval of the application. Those delineations would be subject to the area of the special exception permit, which is only a portion of the 1,200 acres. So whatever is within the boundaries of their application, and immediately contiguous there too, would be subject to those regulations as it applies to this permit.
So that it would be, I guess, safe to say that there are federal and state and local agencies that will make sure that these wetlands and resource-sensitive areas are not encroached upon to the point where it destroys them or creates major environmental concerns? You can just say yes if you want to.
DMME has supervisory authority and regulatory authority over a sand and gravel operation once that the board has permitted it at this level, and it goes to that level. So whatever is under auspices of DMME will be governed by that agency. We will still have authority with respect to the Chesapeake Bay preservation areas and the protection of those areas. But once the sand and gravel operation itself is permitted by DMME, then they retain control and authority of their permit.
Okay. We've heard a lot about the rural character, the preserving of the rural character. And we've heard about the reclaiming process. Would it be fair to say that we have safeguards in this application with the reclaiming of the land that would make it highly likely that it would be good for farming, or that it at least would preserve the rural character as it is now?
We have suggested conditions in there that speak to the reclamation of the property and to return it to agricultural production in a comparable state to what it is now.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. We talked about the location of this SC, and we've talked specifics about this special exception. Other than location, how does this differ from the one we just approved about a month ago?
Location, you do not have a resource-sensitive overlay in the application that was approved a month or two back. The resource-sensitive area designation is limited to the Rappahannock River corridor. So you have the additional standards in the resource-sensitive area that the board has to review the application under those standards that you did not have to review the previous application.
Okay, let's talk traffic. 17 versus, is it 600, I believe? 17 is a major thoroughfare, I guess you would say, and 600 is, would we call that a secondary road?
It's a secondary road. I believe its functional classification is what we call a major collector.
Okay. So what's the big deal? I mean, we didn't hear anything about traffic on 600, and I would think that that would be a major concern as well.
Yes, sir. I would also, going back to your earlier question, if you recall, that application was an expansion of an already existing operation in the area. That mining operation was approaching the end of productivity at the site they were at, and that the special exception granted by the board was on abutting property to their existing operation. So the truck traffic was already there with the existing operation. You are allowing that operation to continue, and therefore the traffic generated by that operation to continue.
Right. But I think the thing is, we have agreed to move the equipment to the new acreage. So then aren't those trucks going to be now coming out on 600 in the county when they were not in the previous?
No, there was no relocation of the access to the property, I don't believe.
I thought it was in King William. I didn't think come out in Caroline at all.
The current operation, the access is in King William County, yes, sir. I don't believe they were proposing to relocate the access into Caroline County.
They're just going to bring the equipment over here.
The processing
Processing equipment, okay. But,
is my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Fincher, just let me just kind of ask a question about traffic. But you would agree that once we expand the sand and gravel on 600 into Caroline, there's going to be more traffic on 600 though. Would you agree that, would you say that? Would you, or not?
Not necessarily. I think it's a function of the activity level at the mine now.
Right.
I think if you had not approved a special exception permit and they did not have anywhere else to expand their operation, then obviously at the end of the life of that operation, you would cease having any truck impacts at all because of the closure of the mine.
So what I hear you saying is basically is that since we allowed them to extend their contract there, does not necessarily mean that they're going to mine more sand and gravel there.
It extends the life of their operation.
But not necessarily increase the impact, is that what you're saying?
It may, it may not. I think it really depends on the contracts they have, the amount of development, et cetera. In theory, yes, you could see some increase in traffic levels depending on the amount of product being hauled from the site.
Okay. And that's really all. I had other questions, but we've talked about it. We talked about traffic and we talked about the impact and so forth. So you can sit down, Mr. Finch. I would just like to say a number of things. First of all, I want to thank these people for coming out tonight because it shows that you have concern, and it certainly helps us in the decision-making process. And this is not easy. There are a number of things that have to be considered. Let me talk a little bit about the petition. I don't think anybody up here was going to make their decision tonight based on that petition. Now, I can't really speak for them. I don't know, but I can speak for myself. We're all intelligent people. We know that when you circulate a petition, there's no way in the world that you're going to be able to verify and determine who put whose name on it. You kind of trust the integrity of the person's passing the petition as well as the person's signing it. I get a petition every 4 years. And I dare say there might have been a name on one of those that didn't sign it. That's why I get more than 125. And so when we think about 1,100 signatures and we focus on 50, then what does that say for the other 1050? But even so, that's not going to be the deciding factor as to whether or not we approve this special exception or not. Now, certainly in the course of all the information that we've heard, it has a place. But if you're just wondering whether or not people want it, unless you were blind, you saw a whole bunch of folks in here tonight that wanted it. And we also saw people who were opposed to it. And that's going to be the case in any situation that we become involved in. But it's generated a great deal of concern, and certainly if there is any way to find out who put those names on there, I would love to know. But I wouldn't stake my Social Security on it. I guess when we look at this special exception, as in any special exception, we look at how it impacts us now and how it's going to impact us 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And we really don't know. All we can do is surmise what it's going to do for us. But we make those decisions based on information that we heard. I've heard person after person after person speak to the character of these two companies. I've heard them talk about how they have given to that various communities that they have served. And I'm sorry, I've been impressed by that. When we start talking about people coming into our communities, do we not want someone who is going to benefit the community, who has a track record of giving and helping to make the community a better place,